Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So I've given Bernie Sanders somewhat of a hard time over the past month, maybe even 2 months. I'm pretty sure somebody's looking at this saying, no asshole, you've given him a hard time longer than that. That may be true, fair enough. That stuff is going to be relative from the standpoint of perspective. But I would make the case, of course, that if I gave him a hard time, I gave him a hard time because he earned it. Now, and again, I know that's also perspective. I guess my point is, I don't necessarily like doing shows where I go after Sanders. I don't like it. It doesn't necessarily feel great. For all intents and purposes, I actually like the guy. So having to go after somebody who you like is not necessarily the greatest experience on the planet. I like doing videos where I can come out and rah-rah for the guy, whether it's Corbyn or whether it's Sanders. This is one of those days where I can say, good job, Sanders. So, Bernie Sanders is pushing to get the United States out of Yemen. Essentially, we shouldn't have anything to do with the conflict. We're murdering Yemenis. We're helping Saudi Arabia murder and starve Yemenis. We shouldn't have anything to do with this. Let's listen to Sanders himself. I'll let him explain what he's trying to do.
Return home alive. And it goes without saying that every armed conflict that the United States of America is engaged in must be consistent with the Constitution of the United States and be lawful. Let us make no mistake about it. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution states in no uncertain terms that Congress shall have power to declare war. Congress shall have power to declare war. The Founding Fathers gave the power to declare war to Congress, the branch most accountable to the people.
I gotta be honest, I'm watching this becoming somewhat of a fanboy as I watch this. Yes, Congress should have the power to declare war. Yes. That's when I'm on this video and I'm screaming, how on earth is the president going from one country to the next without congressional authorization to do so? And certainly that fig leaf of the Iraq war vote if you're in Syria, how on earth are you in Syria? How are you in Somalia? How are you in any of these countries? The United States is like 70% of the globe. It has special forces in 70% of the globe. How does the president of the United States, under his own power, under his own steam, makes the determination to go into one country after the next, bombing and killing civilians? And why doesn't Congress say anything about this? This seems like a massive power grab. Congress never says anything. So me hearing Bernie Sanders make this point of Congress has the power to declare war. The president of the United States is not the king of the United States. He is held by laws. Either we're a country of laws or not. And if we're going to pursue some kind of military conflict, that military conflict the president should not be Batman. Meaning he should not be extra constitutional. He should not go beyond the bounds of the law in order to get whatever he's trying to get accomplished. Now, the person who's supposed to restrain the president on this, who has the powers or the constitutional authority to keep the president in check on this, is Congress. And Congress has completely abdicated that particular responsibility. So I love the idea that there's somebody standing here making this argument that is the most profound and true thing that anyone has ever said. And no, it's not the most profound and true thing anyone has ever said. That's somewhat of a lie. But I'm being hyperbolic for a point. It makes perfect sense to me that the president of the United States can't just willy-nilly go into one country after the next, bombing them using this kind of fig leaf in order to do this. And because both parties are fundamentally militaristic, both parties are okay with this, and neither party checks the power of the president. So yeah, I've become somewhat of a fanboy when I hear a senator talking about anti-war and being open about this thing of, yeah, the president needs to be under constitutional authority if he's going to go into these other countries. Yes, I wish he would have said this under Obama. Fair enough. But he's saying it now, and I'll take it. Let me finish. I'm sorry.
For far too long, Congress under Democratic and Republican administrations has abdicated its constitutional role in authorizing war. The time is long overdue for Congress to reassert its constitutional authority. And that is what Senators Lee, Senator Murphy, and I are doing with this privileged resolution that we are introducing. Many Americans are unaware that the people of Yemen are suffering today in a devastating civil war, with Saudi Arabia and their allies on one side and Houthi rebels on the other. In November of this year, the United Nations Emergency Relief Coordinator said that Yemen was on the brink of, quote, the largest famine the world has seen for many decades, end quote. So far, at least 10,000 civilians have died and over 40,000 have been wounded in the war, and 3 million people have been displaced. Many Americans are also not aware that U.S. forces have been actively involved in support of the Saudis in this war, providing intelligence and aerial refueling of planes whose bombs have killed thousands of people and made this crisis far worse.
Yes! Yes! Thank you! How hard is that to say? How hard is that to say? And doesn't it feel good when it's honest? When you're standing up there and what you're saying? I don't care your political reasons for saying it. I don't care. Doesn't it feel good to get up there and say something that everybody knows is true, but nobody ever says? No one ever says. No one ever gives it press attention. No one ever makes the point. We are helping Saudi Arabia murder and starve Yemenis by the thousands. Us, the United States, is assisting in this particular effort, in this particular endeavor for this theocratic, autocratic nation. Yes. Yes, I like this. Keep going. I like this. Get off that Russia shit. Talk about this. I like this. I like this. This is the guy I voted for.
We believe that as Congress has not declared war or authorized military force in this conflict, the United States' involvement in Yemen is unconstitutional and unauthorized, and U.S. military support of the Saudi coalition must end.
Wait, that's somewhat of a logic issue. Yeah, that's somewhat of a logic issue. If you're going to make the argument that the war with Saudi Arabia, or the war in Yemen, meaning us supporting Saudi Arabia, and this is unconstitutional, I would agree with you. Fair enough. Congress has not authorized it. What about our bombing raids in these other countries? We're not supposed to be in Syria. We're not supposed to be in Somalia. We're not supposed to be in any of those countries. How are we in those countries when we don't have congressional authority to be in those countries? We went into like 7 additional countries when Obama took office. Now, if you're going to make the argument that we're not supposed to be in Yemen, I would agree with you. If you're going to say that it is unconstitutional for us to be in Yemen, I would agree with you. Fair enough. But if you make that case, don't you also have to make the case that all of the other wars are also illegal? Meaning we should not be in those countries either. I don't understand how you can separate Yemen from the other nations on this. What makes Yemen distinct in this? Like, I can understand that you may look at this as being particularly gross. Fair enough. But all of them are particularly gross. You're murdering civilians. I mean, in some cases, Obama was killing like 90% of the people here were civilians. And I like to make this point, even if you take that number down to 60%, the majority of the people who you're killing at that point are just still civilians. I mean, come on. I like this. Let's keep going. I guess my point to this is, I don't know if you can have a partial law in this, where you can say the law applies to this particular one, but it doesn't apply to that one, even though those two things are for all intents and purposes the exact same thing. Let's keep going. But I'm liking the speech.
Without congressional authorization, our engagement in this war should be restricted to providing desperately needed humanitarian aid and diplomatic efforts to resolve it. That is why today, Senator Lee and I and Senator Murphy are introducing a joint resolution pursuant to the 1973 War Powers Resolution calling for an end to U.S. support for the Saudi war in Yemen. The War Powers Resolution defines the introduction of U.S. armed forces to include, quote, the assignment of members of such armed forces to command, coordinate, participate in the movement of, or accompany the regular or irregular forces of any foreign country of government when such military forces are engaged, or there exists an imminent threat that such forces will become engaged in hostilities, end of quote. Assisting with targeting intelligence and refueling airplanes as they bomb these targets clearly meets this definition. This is not a partisan issue. Support for the Saudi intervention in Yemen began under a Democratic president and has continued under a Republican president. Senator Lee is a conservative Republican. I am a progressive independent who caucuses with the Democrats. In November of last year, the House of Representatives, with a strong bipartisan vote, voted overwhelmingly for a non-binding resolution stating that U.S. involvement in the Yemen civil war is unauthorized. Only 30 members of the House voted against that resolution, and that is what we are saying today. We are in agreement with the vast majority of the Democrats and Republicans in the House. Here is the bottom line. If the President or members of Congress believe that support for this war is in the U.S. interest and that we should be involved in it, then let them come before Congress, let them make their case, and let the Congress vote on whether or not we stay in that war. I believe that we have become far too comfortable with the United States engaging in military interventions all over the world. We have now been in Afghanistan for 17 years.
I have to be honest, I haven't interjected too much into this because I'm sitting here somewhat amazed by the speech. There's sometimes where you watch the news, like every so often, I would have the not so much a luxury of watching CNN or Fox News or something like that. And you watch these plastic people give a narrative and give these kind of stories of events. And they give it a particular way, meaning some of the details may be true. Yeah, the details may be true, but it's completely lacking all sorts of context. And having two people sitting there with canned positions in a cockfight, one being Republican, one being Democrat, and those people, you know, it's like this person says Coke, the other person says Pepsi. This host looks at you and says, you decide. And you, as a viewer, have no fucking clue who to believe, or even worse, you just make the decision on who you want to believe for yourself. With insufficient information and insufficient context in order to get that information. Both sides have political angles and political axes they need to grind. How are you going to get the truth in a situation where both sides have political axes to grind? I guess my point to this is, in watching media in that way, and you think to yourself, we're murdering people abroad. I can't be crazy on this. How can I be crazy thinking that that's a big fucking deal to me, but how is this not a big fucking deal to everybody else? If Bob was standing here beside me and Bob got shot, my reaction would be, holy fuck, Bob got shot. Everybody around me would be stunned. People would run in terror. They would flee. I mean, it would be a fuck fest. If a bomb dropped in a political spot, same thing. People would flee. It would be a fuck fest. The country itself, the military, all these things would get ginned up. The public itself, the population. What would it do to the population that's under those bombs? What would it do to the government that's under those bombs, or that's can't protect the society from those, particularly their borders being breached in that way? I'm making a point that it's a big fucking deal to drop bombs on someone else's country, or to put troops in other people's country where you're killing and murdering people and civilians. That's a big fucking deal. And the media completely glosses over this. And so you have this thing of a permanent war that everybody fundamentally understands is taking place, but don't really care about it because it's not necessarily in the forefront of their mind. So yeah, this is blowing me away listening to this, because that's true. It's that rare and weird thing of, wow, that person is telling the truth. That person is telling the truth. Finally, I'm hearing somebody talk about this issue and tell the truth. The United States is bombing and killing all around the world, and the public has gotten far too complacent with this idea of us being bombing and killing all around the world. You're spending $1 trillion on your military. Do you understand that the amount of money that they raised for the military budget would have paid for college for everybody in this country who wanted to go to college, in addition to putting money down on the college debt itself? That's one military increase. They bought that money up overnight, just out of we need $80 billion? $80 billion, you got it. Hey, can we come together as a society and make sure that each of us have the opportunity, if we want to assert that opportunity, to go to school and better ourselves, and that even if you're a bum on the street, at the very least, you can get an education if you want to get an education. That's too expensive, man. That's too expensive. It's easier for our kids to have $50,000 in debt. Let them keep going. I'm blown away by the speech. That's all. Look, my only fault with this speech is that he's not, because I understand from the standpoint of it's Sanders, so he's not going to be a flaming lefty on this. But what he's saying is fucking profound. I mean, maybe Tulsi Gabbard has said stuff like this. I mean, this is fucking amazing. He is literally, Bernie Sanders is saying, I want Congress to reassert control of the declaration of war. We've abdicated this responsibility far too long, and it is our philosophical and constitutional right to assert this particular authority. This is our responsibility, and we've dropped the ball on this. We need to reassert this. We need to strip those powers from the president. That is an amazing fucking statement. My issue with this is he only being specific to Yemen? And I don't understand how you can be specific to Yemen and not necessarily include the other nations. We're bombing. We have troops in those countries too. We have, I mean, come on, paying fucking terrorists in Syria. So, bombing operations in Syria. But whatever, I'll take it. I'll take it. You meeting me at 1/6 of the way? Fuck it, I'll take it. Let's keep going. Less war is a good thing.
Longest war in American history. Our troops are now in Syria under what I believe are questionable authorities, and the administration has indicated that it may broaden that mission even more. The time is long overdue for Congress to reassert its constitutional role in determining when and where our country goes to war, and I'm very proud to be working with Senator Lee and Senator Murphy on this vitally important issue. Senator Lee.
No offense to Senator Lee, but I don't really want to hear Senator Lee's point. He's just going to, for all intents and purposes, second what Bernie Sanders is saying. The focus of this is Sanders. By the way, for all those people who are like Katie Johnston, her idea of working with right-wingers in order to get stuff accomplished that you agree on, oh, she's a Nazi, she's a Nazi. You understand that what she's saying is what's taking place right now. What they're doing. Bernie Sanders, you can say the most liberal, the most lefty of the senators in Congress, and one of the other batshit right-wingers. On this particular issue, they agree. The president should not have the power to just have undeclared war anytime he wants. He's not a king. We don't like the country wasting our resources, killing and murdering and maiming other people. We don't like that. So we need to pull the reins. We need to arrest this position or this power from the president. And you have a right-winger, flaming right-winger, and a lefty. On this particular issue, they agree, and on the issues to which they agree, they're working together. Fucking A. Fucking A. Under normal circumstances, I may be doing videos saying the other guy's a disgusting human being. In this case, good fucking job. Good fucking job. It doesn't go far enough. I mean, and yes, I know I'm saying good job, it doesn't go far enough. But that argument that Sanders just made, saying that there were questionable circumstances of whether or not the United States should be in Syria, it's not fucking questionable at all. If you're going to say that the Yemen war is illegal, yes, the Yemen war is illegal, it's detestable. So is Syria. So is all of those wars. All of those wars. I understand you can make a case for Afghanistan and Iraq. You can't make a case for the other ones. That fig leaf that Obama was using in order to go into those countries is that shit should have been challenged on day one. That should have been challenged on day one. You guys have completely abdicated your responsibility as Congress to ensure that the president doesn't just have undeclared war whenever the hell the president wants. And right now, what, 1% of the United States public is in the military. I believe it was 1%. Last I checked, it was 1%. The president has a private military at this point. He has a private military. 1% of the public, meaning the overwhelming majority of the public, is unaffected by what takes place from the standpoint of military, unless there's blowback and we're hit by something. But the president sends these people out, these special forces. They're in one country after the next. They're using bombing runs, killing, working with other countries in order to, what they call killing terrorists. But ultimately, they end up killing a lot of civilians. They're calling chaos and misery. They're setting the world on fire. And that's what we've been doing around the globe. That needs to stop. That needs to stop. We're making things worse. So, I love this. Good fucking job, Sanders. I don't know how you can say one is illegal, but the other one is not. All of these things are questionable. If one is questionable, all of them are questionable. I don't necessarily know how you're going to say that Yemen is horrible, Syria is bad, but the other ones are perfectly okay. I don't know if you can say that. That's all. I just don't know how you parse the baby in this way or split the baby in this way. It's like if you're going to say one is bad, the other ones have the exact same properties as that one that you're saying you want to stop. So shouldn't that mean you want to stop all of those? But nevertheless, I like the positioning. And I like this idea of Congress is trying to assert its authority to pull back this particular control of the president as a king. Good job, Bernie Sanders. Good job, Bernie Sanders. I love it. And for that matter, good job, Mike Lee, and who's the other guy? And Murphy. On this issue, we agree. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you guys can always support through Patreon or PayPal, I believe. Thanks, guys.